I chose this particular piece is because I think the guy who's writing this article had a very good idea. He said that we should ban email and replace the chaos of email with a structured workflow, because email fee Fridays don't do it.
No.
So ban it and then make people work office hours. Did you read it? Did you read the piece?
Yeah.
So what do you think to his ideas of office hours, which is where the individuals we all guarantee to be available for communication between certain hours? And outside that, you're not. So you can't send me emails and things, but we will deal with stuff that we're going to deal with. Yeah. I can manage my workflow.
I completely get the working in office hours bit, and it's up to people to choose what their office hours are. It might be 8 till 4, or if you've got, you're a working mum and you've 10 till 3, whatever it may be. But why do you have to ban email? What do you want to do? You want to go back to posting messages? You want to go back to phoning people up and they're not there, so you phone them up the next day and the next day and the next day till you catch them?
They will be there. They'll be there because they're in office hours. They guaranteed
They'll be busy
to be
on
available.
another phone call, because instead of doing it the efficient way by email, they're doing it the inefficient way.
You see, and that, he says, these two are just grinning watching this. I'd like you to contribute to the discussion, please.
I don't necessarily believe that emails are efficient, quite frankly.
No.
This is what he says here. He says that's a misnomer to say that you're doing it in an efficient way.
You want to tell 20 people you got a great idea and you'd like their feedback on it. How are you going to do that? Ring them up one at a time, or send an email to 20 people?
First question is, do you need to send it to 20 people? Is question number one. You may, but that's relatively unusual. There are many other ways this day and age of contacting 20 other people, or 20 volunteers perhaps who are interested in it, rather than the 20 you force the email upon.
And that's it. The seed of the problem lies in what you've just said, because taking one example where you want to send 20 people a communication, when you think about everybody doing that, it's overload. Now, I must point out, this guy is talking about running and doing this in innovative organisations, because he believes that the companies that require innovation require a certain kind of thought.
Well, that's
to
the
be
key.
Going on.
That's the key. That's the absolute.
You're an innovative organisation, so
and I think that's the key. If you're in an email is incredibly useful for broadcast, one-way information, to tell people to be somewhere at a time. I'm going to be an hour late. Don't forget your sandwiches, whatever it might be, and you've got to tell everybody who's going to be at that. You can't fault that as a mechanism. So very much in your camp, but in the camp of the article...
No, you can stop there.
Just cut my microphone. But on the innovation side, I think absolutely there's an awful lot that is lost by not having physical interactions, not least all the non-verbal cues and triggers and the likes of. And
absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more, but just because email is not good for everything all the time doesn't mean you have to ban it.
I totally agree. I think that, any absolute is generally, there'll be one example where the absolute has been proven wrong, and there'll be one example where a guy hated email, never used it all his life. He had a heart attack, and all he could do was send an email, and an ambulance came round and saved him. Well, you can't say it's been of no use to you, can you? So absolutes generally are always easy to disprove. But I do think we should. It would be nice to think that we could use email less than we do. This sort of constant, stream of consciousness, or as your kind of legal backup to everything you ever say and do.
It's the attention lag, because the point about the thought process you go through when you're being innovative and so on. If you break that zone that people get into by people clicking and looking at an email, then they go back to it, and then they click and look at another. It's breaking up their attention.
But that's not the fault of the email. That's the fault of the person.
And if what they did was office hours and forced themselves to work office hours, they wouldn't look at the emails that you sent.
That is a solution, but it's also about segmenting. And if you're composing a blog, let's say, just the first thing I thought of, because I was trying to do it earlier and kept getting interrupted by my emails pinging, and I turned off the ping.
There you
didn't go to the emails.
Well done.
So
that's a very good. That's a very
it's
good
a kind
one
of
to do.
minor version of office hours that you're employing.
Yeah, you should do. You should absolutely. The learning, because I think that's a really key point. Change your frequency of emails to something less than instant. important because that's a really key point. Give yourself a little pocket, and get them in groups of 15 minutes worth at the very least. So that's very good that you've done that.
In the old days, as I say, I was selected as senior management on a selection process heavily biased towards a key thing: can you manage your workflow? And if you couldn't, you wouldn't make senior manager.
And you shouldn't.
No, because you just drive as is happening now, you get very stressed over trying to handle every memo that came in. So the idea was, you said, right, I'm going to do an hour on my memos, do some work, and then I'll do another hour on my memos. And that's what everybody knew you were doing, unless it was urgent and they ran in. But there we go.
I think that I think it's mainly women who say that men can't multitask. And actually, I don't think anybody can multitask. You can do things in series, and you can chop and change and do a bit of this, bit of this, bit of this, bit of this. And I think sort of stirring the soup and talking on the telephone doesn't really count as multitasking. No, that's not what it's about.
It's a specific kind of task you can do that way.
And I think that the mistake that a lot of people make, and this email thing certainly comes into that category, is doing it in tiny, tiny chunks. And actually you have to do it in bigger chunks. And you have to say, fine, the next hour I'm going to bang through my emails.
I think that's true, and I think it's also what actually happens. People don't multitask; they just do it quickly, reactively, and generally badly. The quality goes down. It's a quick yes, no, and they thought about a very key thing that might have lots of money attached to it, or the future of the business, and they've gone, oh, let's speak to the health and safety or the productivity guy. What do you think of this? And they go, yeah, that sounds great. Oh, I got it on email. He said it sounds great. Yeah, but that's then framed within the context of if it ever came round to, hang on, you said it was great. You'd say, you sent me one email to ask me if I sound... that doesn't stand up in a court of law, or you can't expect to my reputation on that. So actually, yes, it's, I think it's useful for certain functions, and it should not be used for others. Myself, on important emails, I try as best I can. Time commitments is a problem as everyone else's are, and I try and throw rocks at my answers to see, because that's the other problem with emails, is could it be misinterpreted another way? Am I being incredibly clear on this important issue? And I'll often say what I want to say, but I'll also say I don't mean this, which is another problem with, if I was talking to you guys, the non-verbal would be, you'd see me nodding my head a lot and saying, I do mean this. So I wouldn't have to say, I don't mean this other thing. So,
and that's where we talked about emojis or emoticons. We've raised those on the show before. An attempt to try and sort of put emotion back into it, and the tongue-in-cheek that we all pick up from verbal signals. But I like the statement he makes here, the author. So this is in the Harvard Business Review. I'm just trying to find the author for
Cal
you.
Newport.
Yeah, Cal Newport.
Could he be American by any chance? Cal Newport.
Good old Cal.
And he said whenever he floats this idea in business circles, a lot of complaints are presented, and they're presented as reasons why this will not work for me. But they always turn out to really be reasons why this would make certain situations harder work for me. And he said, fair enough, I don't mind if it's harder work, as long as it's better quality. Email is just so easy, and that's the trap.
But I often have lots of things churning around in my head, and the way I deal with it is to write down a list of things to do, and it's prioritise. I've got to do that now, and I've got to do that now because I promised I'd have them done by lunchtime. That kind of prioritisation. And one of the things on the list is do my emails. And it's never number one on the list. It's never my most important task. I make it number 6 or number 7 because it's, broadly speaking, not time critical. And you've got to build flexibility in, because that the phone can ring, or you can see something come in, or somebody comes into your office and says, need this now, and the rules change.
I think that's great, and you should you use the tools, not the tools use you.
Yes.
And if it's really important, they will phone. And I think that's the right way of doing it.
I think if it's urgent, they'll phone me.
And you know what? I got an email.
If I've got the key to $1 million that they want, they'll be on the phone. They won't wait for an email.
I got an email from somebody today, and I noticed it come in, and I'm not doing emails now, so I ignored it. And 20 minutes later, I got a text from that person that said, just checking you got the email. I could really do with an answer before lunchtime. And I decided to deal with it and prioritise it because I had that additional contact. So.